Welcome, everyone. The event is now live. John, please take it away.
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of our ongoing editorial webinar series, Coffee Talk. Each hour-long, information-packed episode organized by the hardworking folks at Virtualization and Cloud Review features the observations and insights of independent experts on a wide range of tech industry topics. Many thanks to the underwriting sponsor of this episode, Rubrik, the Zero Trust Management Company. Without their support, the Zero Trust Data Management Company. Without their support, this series would not be possible. And thanks to you folks for joining us. I'm John K. Waters, Editor-in-Chief in the Converge 360 Group of 1105 Media, and I'll be your moderator. Today's topic is Expert Guide 2025 Data Resilience Checklist. And our lead presenter is technologist, creator of compelling content, and senior resultant with the Tech Channel Partners Group, Results Group, Howard M. Cohen. I'm not going to get anything right today, I guess. Before we get started, though, just a bit of housekeeping. This episode is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording. It'll be coming your way in the next few days. We'll make some time during the talk for questions. Please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Our sponsor has provided some extra resources you won't want to miss. They're available now in your console. And as a small thank you to the first 200 attendees who stick with us to the end, we will be sending you a $5 gift certificate to Starbucks. It's a cup of joe to go with the info. Now I'd like to introduce our first presenter. Howard M. Cohen has spent more than 40 years in the IT industry. During that time, he has held senior executive positions in many of the top channel partner organizations, and he currently writes for and about IT and the IT channel. He is a sought-after speaker, an insightful observer of the technology landscape, and one of our favorite presenters. You guys are in for an awesome session. Take it away, Howard.
Thank you so much, John. I love that cup of joe with the info. I am Howard M. Cohen, as John pointed out. My company is called the Tech Channel Partners Results Group, thus my chosen title, Senior Resultant. I'm all about results and getting results. And to do that, I've been creating compelling content for and about the channel for 16 years now. If you'd like to obtain my additional resource, just check out the QR code at the bottom of the screen or go to techchannel.substack.com and you can subscribe to my regular free newsletter. Okay, let us get started talking about data resilience. Those of you who have been with me before, and I know there are some of you out there who have, you know that I like to start every session with a word of the day. It's the writer in me. I just love words. And of course, given the subject of today's presentation, the word of the day today is resilience. Resilience. And to illustrate resilience, I'm sharing with you the front of the main U.S. Post Office in Washington, D.C., which features on its front their slogan. The slogan was originally created by Herodotus in the year 485 B.C., reaching way back. And Herodotus was talking about the people that they had delivering messages to and from people. And he emphasized that neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Pretty bold statement, but what he's talking about there is resilience. He's talking about how these couriers are tremendously resilient people who can face any obstacle and still complete their appointed rounds, making the messages available to the people who need them. Excellent. On the search for more definition to the word resilience, we turn to the State Department of the United States of America, which defines resilience as the ability to successfully adapt to stressors, maintaining psychological well-being in the face of adversity. Sounds like husbands. Anyway, it's the ability to bounce back from difficult experiences. That wasn't enough for me. Others that I have found include the data resilience being the ability of an organization to protect, maintain, and recover data in the face of unexpected events such as cyber attacks or natural disasters or hardware failures. taking it to its ultimate conclusion, data resilience is the ability of an organization or its systems to continue business operations in case of unexpected disruptions that directly impact data availability. Data resilience ensures the continuous availability of critical information and related resources. Now, beginning with the end in mind, it's the availability of the data that we're talking about. And so if I were to break down the definition of data resilience to two simple words, those words would be continuing availability. Continuing availability. Availability of the data to the people who are authorized to use it and not to anybody else who's not authorized to use it. So that's as crisp and as complete a definition as I believe I can come up with for data resilience. That's the goal. With that, let's take a look back into 2024 and see how we didn't. National public data didn't. They were probably 2024's biggest data breach. Almost over 2.9 billion records were exposed. That's probably the most significant data leak ever. Looking into a vertical, Change Healthcare had a horrible breach that affected 100 million patient records, maybe the largest healthcare breach in history. Happened last year. The average cost of a data breach reached $4.88 million last year. The cost of a data breach in the cloud was even higher, it was over $5 million. 40% of these breaches involve data stored across multiple environments. We are all diversifying. We are all starting to expand out into various different resources. And so when we do, we create more exposure, and therefore, on the way to half of the breaches involved environments that were using multiple storage facilities. 2/3 involved human errors. Yeah, human errors, such as falling for phishing scams. That's a perfect example. But there were others, and we'll review some of them as we go. But that's important to note. We talk about the improvements we make to our digital devices, but we aren't improving people. And it's very likely that we won't be improving people. So right now, 2/3 of those breaches involve somebody doing something wrong. 14% involved security exploits, 3 times the total in 2023. And on average, it took organizations almost 200 days to identify data breaches. Think about that for a moment. It's over 6 months before they identified that their data had been breached. Once they did identify it, it took 2 more months to contain it. That's horrifying. I mean, think about not knowing that your data has been compromised for over 6 months, and even then, still having to take another 2 months to contain the problem. Not great. And the penalties for this stuff. Meta, which is certainly a deep-pocketed organization in Ireland, was fined 91 million euros for exposing customer data, which was the largest GDPR penalty in 2024. GDPR being, of course, the government data protection regulation that has been in place for several years now. In the European Union or with any organization that does business with the European Union. It's setting a standard that is slowly but surely being adopted here, at first in California, and then in the rest of the country, which is somehow the way things often go. So 2024 was not an auspicious year. Things got worse across the board. In fact, if we look at the top 10 cyber threats during the year 2024, the first one was social engineering. Yep, there it is, people. Engineering attacks so that it took advantage of and exploited the failings of human beings. Basically, as it says here, they duped the users into sharing access, either by giving them a link to click on or an attachment to open. And when they did so, it exposed their network to all manner of bad stuff. The user is literally opening the door to the cyber thief. So social engineering was the number one of the top 10 cyber threats of last year, and it is a broad category. Third party exposure. Um, Here, we're talking about the connections between your organization and other organizations. Um, Specifically, we could focus on supply chain networks, where suppliers are connecting to a company that then connects to its customers and other associates and affiliates. And each of those connections is an open door to potential exploit. So third party exposure was number two for last year. Number three surprises me personally because I thought number three was number one. And indeed, it is a component of number one. It is caused by human beings. But in this case, it's not caused by somebody attacking a human being. It's being caused by a human being making a mistake. And that is a misconfiguration. There are many things to be configured across a network, many, many, many things. So the opportunity for mistakes is huge. Unfortunately, those mistakes are often not caught until it's too late, after a cyber criminal has exploited one of those mistakes. And so putting more emphasis, more diligence into monitoring and evaluating any changes to make sure that they were done correctly is a good investment of time, funds, and effort. Um, Misconfiguration accounts for an enormous um, component of the threats that we've been experiencing in the past year and before. Then there's poor cyber hygiene, again, a component of number one, social engineering. And again, not being caused by an attack, but rather being caused by stupid human tricks. Um, a user who uses the password as their password, kind of easy to figure. And according to stats, somewhere between 75 and 80% of users out there are still using something like password as their password, or they're using 1234567 or 8765431 or something else that simple. Also popular are pets' names and spouses' names. Not sure why those two are kept together, but there you have it. Cloud vulnerabilities. Since we're making more and more use of cloud, it's no surprise that cloud vulnerabilities are growing as one of the top 10 cyber threats. Remember that when you're using cloud, you are connecting to other resources. And anytime you have a connection between more than one resource, you have an opportunity for exposure and exploit. So cloud vulnerabilities have hit the list of the top 10. Ransomware, for some reason, earned its own spot on the top 10 list from Mbroker. Ransomware, of course, we've talked about already, those links and those attachments that users can click on to open the door to cyber thieves to come in and abuse their network. Now, of course, they're being used to allow access to infrastructure. We all remember the Colonial Pipeline exploit several years ago, where an oil pipeline, a national oil pipeline, was shut down due to a ransomware attack. We're now seeing electrical companies, electric supply companies, and water treatment companies, and other kinds of infrastructure being impacted by ransomware. These infrastructure attacks are far more dangerous because they impact not only the data, they also impact the people themselves. I'll give you an example. An industrial control system used to manage and control the air conditioning um, in a building. Uh, if it's compromised and the air conditioning is shut down, that's a bad thing. But if that building happens to be here where I live, near Phoenix, Arizona, in the middle of July, where it's 120 degrees outside, shutting down that air conditioning could be life threatening. And so there's all kinds of examples like that. It's no joke when nation states are attacking our electrical grid. That's danger. Mobile devices. Mobile devices are perhaps the most obvious points of vulnerability, and they require far more diligence in the way they're configured and the way they're provisioned to be secure. There are many strategies, far too many for me to review here. We have done some sessions on those strategies in the past. So if you look back through coffee talks of years gone by, you'll see some of those. Hopefully, we'll be doing more as we go into the future. But mobile devices are, especially because they're becoming so ubiquitous, it's just open doors to many cyber criminals who know that's probably a best way for them to try to get in. So we need to put far more concentration into how we secure and provision mobile devices. Similarly, the Internet of Things. In 2008, Cisco tells us that there were more things on the internet than there were people. And that's only grown since. There are billions and billions of controls and sensors and other devices that are now at the edge of the global internet. Unfortunately, almost all of those devices are low powered, lossy devices, LLPs. And when they're low powered and lossy, that means they don't have a lot of circuitry in there to protect them or to create any kind of decent security for them, which means you need to be putting a lot of software in front of them to protect them. So if you are deploying devices along the Internet of Things, you need to pay attention to what you do first to protect them before you finish deploying them. And then the last one is simply poor data management, which I think is kind of a function of poor cyber hygiene. But lots of people like to simply save multiple versions of the same data because they don't want to lose anything. And they think that having more copies will prevent them from losing anything. It also dramatically expands their attack surface. And so cyber criminals have a much bigger surface to attack through to get at that data. Again, one of the top 10 cyber threats. And the 10th, and I didn't create a slide for this and I apologize, but it's simply reporting. Reporting about all of this. Okay. In many cases, if you are subject to government regulation, maintaining your compliance includes the responsibility to report any incident or any event that may occur. If you are compromised, you need to report it. And you need to report it to the appropriate authorities, and you need to report it on time. Being late will incur tremendous penalties, and failure to report even more so. So the 10th top 10 cyber threat is failure to report properly. And that is the 10. Okay, so we've looked at the past year. It's not a happy picture. But let's now look forward into 2025. And let me start by revealing to you the greatest threat to data resilience that we will confront in 2025. The number one greatest threat will be AI, artificial intelligence. Okay, artificial intelligence is being incorporated into all manner of attacks. And that's out there for us to worry about. How? Well, number one, it absolutely improves the ability of a cyber criminal to use social engineering to manipulate people. It can broaden the attack. It can focus the attack far better than human beings can. It's also much better than humans are at identity theft. It can learn much more about an individual much faster than a human being possibly could by checking an enormous number of resources very, very, very quickly. It can literally automate the function of ransomware. I hate to say it, but if you, any one of you, would like to go into the ransomware business, you can, even if you have no knowledge of ransomware or limited knowledge or no knowledge of networking. You can simply sign up for a subscription to a ransomware service. Yes, ransomware as a service, RAS. Horrifying, but it's out there. And it makes use of artificial intelligence to automate the process of attacking users. It also improves the ability to exploit IoT devices. It can hunt through billions, literally billions of devices very quickly and figure out which ones are most vulnerable and how to compromise them, and then how far into the network they can go after they've done so. Much faster than any human being ever possibly could. Similarly, the dark web. AI can hunt for stuff through the dark web much faster than human beings ever could. And so there's a big problem. Another exposure, and this one impacts us as human beings, is the growing popularity of deep fakes. This is the one that most people know about. This is the one that most people focus on because it's so public and so out there. During the recent presidential campaign, there was a robocall that was going out that featured ostensibly President Joe Biden saying awful things about Vice President Kamala Harris, things he would never say. Well, it wasn't him. It was a deep fake generated by artificial intelligence that sounded just like him, right down to the phrasing, the cadence, and the way he speaks. So deep fakes are horrifyingly accurate, horrifyingly realistic, and horrifyingly fooling many, many people. Similarly, it can increase the sophistication of phishing attacks. Give you the grand example. You know that people are using artificial intelligence to create all kinds of fun images. Some men have been publishing photographs of themselves looking far more rugged than they really do. Others feature women wearing clothing from previous eras, pilgrim eras, and so forth. You know, fun stuff, very interesting stuff. But imagine if they told the AI create a perfect duplicate of this bank's letterhead. I think it serves to say that the AI could do that a lot better than a person could. And so that's just one way in which they're increasing the sophistication of phishing attacks. They're also being used to automate malware so that the scope of malware infection can be accelerated dramatically. And blockades to the malware can be overcome for the first time. So that's another way in which AI is being used as a powerful weapon against all of us and our data resilience. And then there's the one that scares me the most personally. This is my least favorite, and that is multi-factor authentication bypass. Yeah, they are able to bypass multi-factor authentication. So even you can get that 6-digit or 8-digit number and you can enter it after your password, but so can somebody else if they assign their AI to brute force it or otherwise attack it and obtain that same code. This shakes me because I always thought that MFA was a huge, huge boon to all of us in the way that we protect our data. Microsoft was ready to announce the death of the password when MFA became extremely serious. Now, We're going to have to rethink all of that. And so this is how 2025, these are some ways in which the greatest data resilience threat of 2025 will be artificial intelligence. Okay, so we have seen the danger. Now that we have seen the danger, let me reassure you by introducing you to the key weapon in protecting our data resilience. And the key weapon will be AI. That's right. The greatest threat is also our greatest weapon in defending ourselves against those attacks on our data resilience. First of all, AI can detect threats faster when it constantly monitors your network. It can detect patterns or signatures on the network much faster than any human being ever possibly could. Once it has detected those threats, it can evaluate the nature of those threats very quickly. And when it does so, it can do so with improved accuracy so that it's getting the right evaluation of the threat the first time, which again improves the ability to defend against that threat. And it does so autonomically. That is, it doesn't require any people. So you don't have to have people sitting there staring at screens trying to figure out what's happening when you have AI doing that for you at thousands to millions of times faster than a human being ever could. This also extends to IoT devices, non-human devices. Each one has to authenticate itself to the network, and that's one kind of authentication that should be pretty easy for cyber criminals to exploit. Well, AI helps by managing that for you. Of course, the most obvious improvements available from the use of AI include improved log scanning. You know, think about how long it takes you to sit there and interrogate a log. You've got a network traffic log, pages upon lines upon lines, and you could go blind trying to figure out what patterns you see there. There have been some tools that help, but imagine artificial intelligence knowing what the patterns look like, including the most recently discovered patterns, and applying that to its speed of ability to scan those logs. You better believe it's going to detect potential oncoming threats faster than you ever possibly could. And now the AI itself can take action. It can respond to what it monitors. It sees a problem, it can literally go out and respond to it and take action for you. So the user is no longer required to be there to take, to make response and to fix the problem. Remediation is handled by the AI itself. And so when I say it's the greatest weapon available to us in combating the greatest weapon, which happens to be the same, it's get ready for AI wars, people, and let's wait to see what George Lucas does with that. Okay, so now that we've looked at the greatest threat and we've looked at the greatest weapon we have to respond to it, let's talk about what you can expect in 2025. First of all, you can expect that the tool sprawl we've all been experiencing over the past 20, 30 years will continue and accelerate. More engineers entering the marketplace with more opinions of which tool they prefer, and less control over it than there should be. Every time you introduce a new tool, you introduce tremendous exposure. First of all, you need new training, you need new support, you need new interfaces between what that tool does and the other tools you use do. There's just tremendous exposure there. And of course, if the person who brought the tool leaves, you may have lost your best expert at using that tool and you may have to discard it. So tool sprawl is something you should be focused on. Prefer best of platform over best of breed tool. Next up, increased third-party risks. More and more people are creating supply chain networks and taking better advantage of them to accelerate commerce. It's a good thing. But from our perspective in IT, it introduces more and more opportunity to exploit the network. And so we need to be even more careful than ever before. At the same time, the regulatory landscape is growing more complex, and I want to be very clear about that. Uh, I mentioned GDPR before. GDPR was a broad brush of requirements that every network operator had to go through. NIS2 gets it far more focused down into what each kind of organization needs to be aware of and needs to be focusing on. So there's much more complexity to making sure that you are in full compliance with the rules that impact your industry. At the same time, the penalties are not only increasing, and they are increasing, they're also expanding. I've mentioned NIS2 a couple of times. One of the new features of NIS2 is that failure to comply will certainly incur penalties for the organization that is out of compliance, but it will also, it can also require penalties for the individuals in the company who are managing that network. So as an individual network manager, you may be liable for those fees, for those penalties. Infrastructure targeted ransomware, which we talked about before, very dangerous. More attacks through cloud environments, more dangerous. More attacks on non-human devices on the net. You better believe the IoT is under attack. AI itself, increasing threats to data privacy and model security. And then after the AI threat, let's go into 2026, 2027 and beyond. Next up, you'll see quantum computing creating hazards for us. Now, quantum is dramatically faster than anything we've ever encountered before. And even though it's not ready for prime time yet, there are cyber thieves that are harvesting data now, knowing that in a couple of years, when it does become mature, quantum can be used to decrypt that data then. So they're doing harvest now, decrypt later. In closing, let me just share with you some strategies and skills you ought to be focusing on immediately to get yourselves prepared for what's coming in 2025. First and foremost, if you have not already, implement AI ops. Use as much AI as you can to drive your operations from the network itself down to the applications, data management. Every facet of your IT farm needs to be managed as much as possible by AI. Along with that, focus on zero trust architecture, which no longer looks at the perimeter of the network, but rather looks at each component of the network and whether or not it has been authenticated sufficiently. And the answer is usually no. Constant authentication, constant qualification. You're going to need to improve your cryptographic capabilities, your knowledge of cryptography, because as quantum gets closer and as AI is more and more involved, cryptography has to become more sophisticated. What you've used to encrypt your data so far will no longer be adequate. So you've got to focus there. You always need to be improving your identity and access management, especially if MFA has been compromised. You're going to have to find new multi-factor, not just two-factor, but multiple factors to authenticate that. You need to be focused on being constantly aware of your own regulatory exposure. If you haven't looked at the regulations in a few months, look at them now. Look at them every few months. Make sure you are constantly current on what you're required to do under the regulations you are subject to. Especially assure thorough regulatory reporting. If you have not been reporting, get started. If you don't know what reporting you're required for, turn to the Act. Find out what you're required to do. Make sure that you have constant monitoring at all times and using AI for proactive detection. Formalize your security incident and event management provision. You need to have a system in place that automates the reporting on any security incident or event. And then finally, if you're going to end with the beginning in mind in this case, formalize your management of risk and your governance of data. Data governance begins with policy. If you don't have policy, you don't know what to enforce. So use this as your checklist of the things you need to be focusing on to get yourself ready for the AI wars and the quantum wars yet to come. And with that, I will turn it back to my good friend John.
Yikes. Okay. Want to let everybody know that there's still plenty of time to type your questions into the Q&A box. We'll do our very best to get to all of them. Let's start with the first one from Lynn, who's a longtime attendee. Hi, Lynn. Hope you had a great holiday season. The question is, are there specific metrics or KPIs that businesses should track to assess their data resilience maturity?
As usual, my answer to you, Lynn, is yes, there are too many. For every manner of data, for every manner of storage, for every manner of data estate, there are various and sundry KPIs, way too many for me to list here. But again, the biggest one, the one that I started with, is to me the one that you have to begin with, which is availability. You do need to be measuring, we always talk about 5 nines, which most people know is 99.999% availability, which, by the way, in the course of a year is still more than a week of downtime. So it's not as complete as people think. But you need to state what your service level agreement will be, and you need to achieve that level of data availability. And again, availability only to people who are authorized to access and not those who are not authorized to access.
Okay, let's see. We've got one here from Al, who's wondering, Howard, how do you think agentic AI will impact data security and resilience? We've written often about the rise of agents.
Well, the interesting, agents, if you ask Microsoft, agents are the future. A lot of other companies have been working on agentic AI. And one of the advantages I personally see to agentic AI, and by the way, if you want to read more about this, please follow my column, Practical AI, in John's wonderful publication, Pure AI Magazine. But agentic eliminates the need for access to a specific large language model and replaces it really with multimodal, multi-resource availability by a process that can stand completely alone. It's very, very purpose-built, if you will. And so I think that agentic AI will become the next great weapon in this AI wars that I talk about. If you think about the stormtroopers, agentic agents, AI agents will be the stormtroopers of the AI wars.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we got one here from Ken. I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. Phone and email, what else can be added to MFA?
Okay, I guess I do understand. Phone and email are two ways in which today's MFA returns a secret code. You can get it displayed on your mobile phone, or you can get it called to you and spoken to you. Prior to that, there were those famous little key fobs that everybody ran around with that would generate the number for you. But I'm not talking necessarily about new ways to obtain the code. I am talking about adding more modalities to the authentication. That is to say, there is technology that has been around for years that can monitor your typing, the cadence of an individual person's typing. And so they're asked to type something, and that cadence is monitored by the authentication system, and they are given access if indeed their typing is the right cadence. I have personally found that to be impossible to overcome, which I find extremely, extremely impressive. But I guess net, we're talking about biometrics. We're talking about adding a
Hmm.
fingerprint or a retina scan or something that an other agency couldn't possibly. I talk all the time about combining something your password, with something you have, which is your phone. That's not enough. You need something that only you have and nobody else could possibly have. So I guess body parts really qualify.
Ah, okay, we've got time for one more. One just came in from Nadu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And the question is, oh boy, with what could be not included in the data resiliency checklist, would that likely grow more? So,
Huh?
do you get that, Howard?
No, not at all.
Okay, I'm sorry, Nadu. If you want to restate, we'll give it another try. Meanwhile, there's the one here from Perry who's wondering. We've always been told that better resilience comes from having redundant systems, but you didn't mention that today. Why not?
Um, Honestly, because it's a given. I remember building networks in the 1980s. Yes, I am that old. And I remember having people tell me you need to build a redundant data center for the one that you're deploying. And I said, tell that to my customer. Good luck. But nowadays, with with remote data centers and with outsourced data centers and with all kinds of other facilities available, um, anybody can have a redundant server or redundant servers, redundant storage. And frankly, when you're using the cloud, you are using multiply redundant data centers. It's just kind of dyed into the wool of how we protect data today. So if you're using no redundancy, you are as exposed as somebody can get. And everything else you do may be a waste if somebody decides to bring you down. But if you do have any measure of redundancy, simply using cloud, for example, as your way to get at redundancy, it's better than nothing.
That was great advice, Howard. Thank you so much as always. Great to start the new year off with you, my friend.
Same here.
Thank you, folks, for joining us. And a special thanks to Rubrik for sponsoring this episode. We couldn't have done it without them. Keep an eye out for our next episode and for your Starbucks gift card. It should be coming your way in the next few days. And if you take nothing away from this else for this episode, remember,